Hi, it's Laura with Following the Paper Trail, and I have the August Bird Abode to show you today. This one is a little surf shop style of birdhouse. It's got some area down here with sand and seashells with acrylic over it to simulate water. It's got a little dock. You can add some of your beachcombing finds on top of the dock. The little pilings with the rope, and then it has a life ring as the quote-unquote entrance into the birdhouse, which is just a black solid circle, and then it has some banners made from some cute bright paper. Then the roof lifts up, and inside there is, of course, a mini album. So let me set this aside for the moment, show you the mini album. This is a great place to display some of your summer beach going or lake going photos. And inside it has pockets that look like little sailboats with the different then you have tags inside, so the sail creates a bit of a pocket, so then you can have little tags inside, as well as this one folds open so that you have more real estate, and then these little tags and mats fit inside the pocket created by the sails. So great for your fun in the water type of photographs. But I do want to go ahead and show you how this summer bird abode goes together. To start with, we're going to create the body of the birdhouse, put the roof on. Then we're going to go ahead and create the base, and I'll show you how to do the water and the sand, and then the dock will be last, and then all the embellishments. So let's go ahead and get started with the body of our birdhouse to begin with. We have 4 pieces to our body, the front, the back, and our 2 sides. And we are going to assemble these together to create a box without a top or a bottom using our construction strips. Now the construction strips are strips of cardstock cut 3/4 of an inch wide. They are then scored down the center and folded. I've then put adhesive tape on each side of that fold, but you can also use glue. Now with this one, because these construction strips are going to be on the inside of our birdhouse, we can make our seams abutting. We don't have to provide a gap to allow it to fold, because the strips are going to be on the inside almost like a hinge. And so we are going to take our folded strips, line up our fold with the edge of the chipboard. We can then peel the paper backing off, bring our seams, lining up our top and our bottom, bring our seams and abutting. Now these sides were cut from a rectangular piece of chipboard, and then I just measured down 2 inches on the side, made a mark, and then I just connected the dots and cut it to that angle. The dimensions for everything are in the pattern, which is available on my website at Laura Denison. No, it's at the store website, which is followthepapertrailwithlaura.com. You can also reach it through my blog at Laura Denison Designs, and that's where the pattern is available. The kits are sold out of this one. So we're attaching the 2 sides to the front, and then we'll also attach the back on. So add this strip here. Oops, I cut it a little bit long. We'll trim it off here in just a sec. Oops. I already have that pre-taped for putting the paper to the outside. Okay, butt that up, cut it. So now I can go through and trim this out. Wouldn't need to do that if I'd have cut it to the right length to start with. We'll check the other one, see if I can't measure on it. Yep, can't measure on it. Just trim it off. I always tab my corners on those so that that reduces some of the bulk. So attach again, the fold lines up with the edge of your chipboard. Attach that down, and then if I bring these 2 pieces together, They should line up, or at least close, but I can bring them together that way. Again, abutting our seams, touch that down, and then it creates our open top and bottom. Now we can add, it's not stable just yet, we can add some pattern paper to our front and back to start with. I've put my tape around the perimeter, and then I've cut my paper so it overhangs on each side approximately 1/2 inch. It's going to line up here at the top and the bottom with the overhangs on the side. Now to attach this, I typically like to just pull off one strip of my tape, so that way I can center this on there, kind of slide it into place without having all that other tape ready to grab it at a moment's notice, so then I can get this center. So then I can just lift it up and peel out the backing off of my tape, so then I can attach it down a little easier. Because I don't know about you, but every once in a while, if I take all the tape backing off, and I drop it into place, it invariably will drop into place where I don't want it. Alright, so as you can see, we have this overhang on each side, so now I've already pre-taped it, but we'll be able to then, holding this relatively square, just pinch and wrap this around to the side pieces, and that's why we had that overhang on there. Now, where did my bone folder? So I'm going to burnish this all in place, make sure it's on there nicely. Same thing over on this side. Peel the tape backing off. And just pinch it between your thumb and finger and wrap it around to that side. Get the bone folder right there. Alright, so now we're ready to do the same thing to the front. Again, it's going to line up top and bottom. Actually, I'm going to go this way. Slip it into place, lining it up with my bottom edge, and then I can just peel off the tape paper and stick it down the rest of the way. I know, I'm sorry, I'm talking a little bit softly today, and I shouldn't be doing that. Again, we'll wrap this around. Stick it down. Get a good burnish. Do the other side. Then we got these little dog ears that we can go ahead and trim those off. Get those out of our way. That's a little bit more stable now. It'll sit up straight. Now we also want to add some construction strips along this bottom edge so we can attach it to, oh wait a minute, skip a step. Got to put my side pieces on. So let's go ahead and get our side pieces. Now these are cut exactly to your side panel size. So you can use that kind of as a template to create your side panels, and then they will just attach on. Now when you cut them out of your pattern paper, make sure you're making two sides, but that they are mirror imaged, so that you can see how I want them to be mirror imaged. You can do the same sort of thing when you're attaching this on. It's just peel off one strip to start with, so that you can then line everything up before you stick down the whole thing. So peel the, sorry, I'm right up in the camera with that. Do the height of this thing. So then we can just slide and roll that down into place. So there we've got our bird house covered, but as I said, we do want to add some strips of construction strips so that we can attach this down to our base. So same sort of thing, we're just going to line those guys up with the fold, and set those inside. And you're going to do that on all 4 sides, the front, the back, and both sides. Stick those guys down. Last 2 on the sides. Okay, next up what we will be making is our base that next we'll be making our roof. So next we do want to attach a roof to it. We're all set to attach to our base, so let's get our roof attached. So with our roof is in 2 pieces. It's got the main part, which lifts up. Then there's going to be a hinge seam, and then the front part of our roof. And this is how we'll lift up to be able to access the mini album. Now I've added score tape around all edges, but most importantly you want to make sure you have tape on each side of where that joint is going to be, or glue if you prefer to use glue. But you want to always make sure that the paper is attached right to the chipboard firmly on each side of that joint. Now I have cut my paper a little longer in order to allow for the hinge joint that we're going to have on here. So unlike the inside seams where we were butting them together, on this outside I want to have a gap here. And I would say you can have up to about an 1/8 of inch gap. A minimum of a width that is equal to 2 thicknesses of your chipboard, but about an 1/8 of an inch. The less stress that is on the paper at that joint, by giving it some room to breathe, the less likely your paper is to have a cracking or tear failure. So after I've got those attached down, I can cut off the excess that I added to it. And now I can do the same thing by adding the other side on. I'm just going to pull it off of this top edge to start with, and then I'll pull it off of that one. That way I can get it lined up. Start at a corner, line up with the edge, stick that down. I can then go in and peel off my tape paper on the balance of the roof. And again, go ahead and trim away the excess. Didn't get it perfectly straight on there, so just trim that little excess away as well. So then where that joint is, I can gently fold it, and you can see how easily it'll move. This is then going to attach onto our roof so that lifts out. So this front edge needs to be fixed on. So we've got some construction strips, goes across the full width of the front edge. So again, always line up your fold of your construction strip with the edge of your chipboard. And then I have 2 pieces that were 1 inch long. I did angle the corner slightly towards the corner. I'm going to attach those on. And they're only 1 inch long because we're going to only have 1 inch of the roof attaching. The balance is going to be the overhang. So when we go to attach this, we're going to line that fold up so that it's 1 inch down from that front edge. So if I line my fold up with the edge of where those construction strips are, that'll leave this back part to be able to attach, or to open up and access our mini album inside. So let me peel the paper backing off of these. So if I line up, so if I fold that up like so, line that up, making sure, let me turn it so I can make sure that I'm centered. So if I'm centered here and here, then I can kind of just set that down, hold it in place, reach up inside, and engage those strips up inside. So inside there. I've stuck those down. So now it's attached. I do recommend that you run a bead of glue that will dry clear along here. Since this is the most interactive part of this, you want to make sure that your roof's not going to come off. Don't want to blow the roof off. So run a bead of glue right along that edge when that will dry clear. So now that we've essentially got our main part of our birdhouse done, we're ready to make our base and assemble that. So with our base, we've got our base piece and some side pieces. Now this is, if you don't have a corrected version of the pattern, I had this as 8 by 8. It's supposed to be 6 3/4 inches by 8 inches. So you're just going to need to cut that 8 by 8 inch piece down so that it's narrower. You're going to have pieces for the side pieces that go on each side, but we're not going to attach them to our base to start with because we want to have it to where the base is kind of centered on these fascia strips. So what I've done is I've marked a line down the center. These are 1.5 inches tall, so this is at 3/4 of an inch, and I've marked this on all 4 of the sides of our base faces. So to start with, we're going to assemble these together to form a box, kind of a shallow open box sides, again with our construction strips on the inside so our seams are butting up. So then we can go to our next one. Line up that line as well as lining up your edges. See how good I measured with my drawing my 3/4 inch strip. It's going to be close enough. So add all 4 pieces in, and then our last piece will be, whoops, guess it helps to stick it down, doesn't it? I just set it up there and wishful thinking that it sticks. So then we'll get this last one on, and you will see how it will form essentially a shallow box without a top or bottom. So we should be able to fold this down like that. Whoops, I did that. I did 2. I love it when I do that. When you're not paying attention, it should alternate the longer and the shorter. So I boo-booed that. So let's see. I need one of these guys off of there. Alright. The little spatula. So go make sure you alternate long, short, long, short. Easy fix. Alrighty. So then you should be able to just fold it in half. And everybody should line up and stick down. So now we have that rectangular box. Now we're going to take our construction strips and add those where our fold is lining up with that line that we've drawn inside to create a ledge in order to attach our base to, so that our base is halfway down inside of this base side. So you can see how I've attached that in there. So we'll do that around all 4 sides. It's kind of hard for you to see on camera and me to see to be able to put it in there. So get these all on. You just line it up on that line all the way around. You can also do this out of 1/2 inch or so chipboard strips that you could glue to where the top edge of that chipboard is along the line, and then that just creates a very narrow ledge that you could glue your base to if you prefer, rather than the construction strips. Either method's going to work. So see how that creates the ledge. We're going to test this out, make sure this fits down inside. Should be a nice snug little fit, like so. Works perfect. So at this point I can either just peel those off, or I can pop it out again, and then it's easier to peel them off. Peel off the paper. You can also glue these in place, obviously. Peel this all off, and then we will go ahead and slip our base down inside. it down inside so it rests on that ledge all the way around. You can then support it from the other side, but go ahead and stick these down all the way around. Again, by supporting it, we can give it a good burnish, make sure everybody's attached down and that the adhesive is engaged. So that's going to give us our little base. It has the lip on there so that we can create that water effect. Our birdhouse is then going to attach down inside of that base. And you should have just under an inch on each side, and there's about 2 3/4 of an inch here then in the front, because we're going to attach our birdhouse so it's right up against that back edge. So we can go ahead and do that by peeling off the backs of our construction strips on the base of the birdhouse. We can then stick this down. It's going to be hard for you guys to see at this point. So I'm just going to eyeball it into the center. You can measure if you prefer, and then making sure I have my sides relatively straight, I then just attach it down. I can then reach down inside my birdhouse and engage those strips to make sure it's attached then to my base. So now I've got my birdhouse attached down to my base. So let's set that aside for a second. Next up, what we're going to make is our little piling tube. So I've already made some that I'm going to use, but I want to show you how those are constructed together. So first up, what you're going to do is you're going to have 1/2 inch strips that you're going to assemble into a tube with your construction strips and the butted seams inside, just like we did for our base and that sort of thing. It's just on a smaller scale around. And so you're going to make those, you're going to make 5 of these. After they're constructed, then we want to go ahead and cover them. You can cover them in cardstock, like I am here, or it can be in pattern paper, whichever you prefer. So we're going to wrap this. Now I've cut this, because these are 1/2 inch, so I've cut this to 2.5 inches so I have some overlap. I'm going to, oops, before I do that I need to add some tape around our tubes so it's not just the paper holding on at the edges. We want to wrap it around this top edge, at the bottom edge, and in the middle. So we did it at that top, and we'll run around the bottom and then one around the middle. You don't need to cover all the surfaces completely with your tape. This is going to be sufficient to hold our paper on, because then we also have it on the front and back edge. So I'm going to peel this off partially so that I don't get stuck to it when I set this down. So then I go ahead and center this roughly on one of the edges, stick it down. Now I can take the rest of my tape off. So then I'm essentially just going to roll this down, making sure it's nice and snug, going around the corners. Roll that right up. This overlap, then I can go ahead and peel my tape off of here, and it's going to just wrap around. Give it a good burnishing to engage the adhesive, and then I'm going to cut just a little 1/2 inch square that I will then glue onto the top to create the top of my pilings. Now with these other ones, I've already taken and I've inked them just to give them a little bit of distressing so that they look a little bit worn and weathered. Now these guys are all going to place on our base here so that they attach on each side of the house, but they're up against the side, not up against the house itself. There's one going to be in the center front, and then one in each of the front corners. So we can go ahead and glue those into place. So I'm just going to put some glue along the two edges that are going to attach to that base side piece, and a little bit of glue on the bottom. So stick those in, wipe away the excess, but stick those in on the base. Put a little more glue on this one. Maybe run a little glue around that bottom edge to hold it in place, and just stick that up into that corner. When I put the one here on the center front, I'm just going to use a grid on my table to kind of eyeball the placement so it's roughly in the center. Obviously, you can go ahead and measure it if you prefer. Another way to do this is to take your ruler and set it in on side and use it kind of as a centering means to set that in there. Now I can leave my ruler in there, and this is kind of hard to see with the roof in the way, but if I set my ruler and put it up against the front of my birdhouse, then that makes sure that when I attach these ones along the side that they are lining up with my birdhouse face. Since it's not touching the actual birdhouse, it's over on this edge, and as soon as I get this glued in, I'll show you what I'm talking about. See, by having my ruler up against the face, then I can bring this piling up against the ruler, and I know this is lining up then. I'm going to do this other side. Again, have my ruler inside, which I know this is hard for y'all to see, and attach him to the sides. So that gives me my 5 pilings, one on each side, one in each corner, and the last one centered in the front. Now, in order to create the sense of the water, what we're going to do, tip my light a little bit. Uh-oh, I messed with it. I shouldn't have done that. Come on, light. Don't not cooperate with me now. I shouldn't have touched it. What was I thinking? There. All right. So then I've cut a piece of acrylic according to what's in the pattern, and I've notched out my corners and that center to notch for my pilings. Now, my pilings are made from 1/2-inch strips, but by the time you put them together and wrap them, they're larger. So you want to start out with probably cutting 5/8 of an inch square notches, and then test it out. You may need to shave it a little bit in order to get it to fit in there. So you want to test it out. It should just slide right on down. You don't want it super tight. So because it's a little bit tight, I'm going to go ahead and trim a little bit off of this back edge. The notches seem to work. It just seems to be need a little bit of trimming off. Trim just a little bit to start with, because you can always cut away more. You can't add it on. So sometimes it gets a little bit tricky cutting the acrylic because your ruler wants to slide, but there we go. So I just cut that little sliver off, and it should fit probably a little bit better. So it should just slip right down in. Now don't stick it all the way down, because then you'll never get it back out again. So what I've got is I've taken and covered with some pattern paper some 1/2-inch deep strips that are going to create a ledge inside. So we're going to attach those pieces inside. Whoops, that guy didn't get glued down quite, did he? Come on, buddy, you want to stay down. And then I've also cut pieces that go in between here and here, as well as, oops, those aren't the right ones. I have all these pieces here. So the sides, those little sides. I had these all separated out, and then I goofed up. Okay, so those are the right ones. So then I just can attach those to the sides of the inside edges here of my base. So just if you want to have them not sticking down like that one did. That just jumped right out of my hand and stuck itself down. You want to make sure the bottom of these strips are all the way down to the base. So slip it down and then slip it into place. There we go. So peeling off the paper backing, making sure it's down on the base and slipping it into place. Same thing with this long one. Trim these as you need to. Cut them to the length of the space between. Either here or along this edge. Don't stick yet. This one's being ornery and really sticking. Okay. This is also going to attach to these guys, and so that'll help stick that, hold them in place, since they only had that one edge. And that's going to hold those in place. And then in between, now these I'm going to have to trim slightly so that they fit. Trim a little bit more. You know, always take off the absolute minimum that you need to. You can always cut off more. So that one's going to slip down in there. Sometimes these might, for some of you may find, rather than using the tape to attach them, you may find it to be easier to do them with glue. And just keep shaving off little bits and pieces. Knock that piling out over. And like this big hurricane coming in there, knocking the pilings off. And I'll show this. I know this is hard to see on camera. Stick that down. These pilings. Normally I would let them dry before I start doing that. So see how we've got those strips all the way around, so that when we take and slip this in, it gives a ledge for that, essentially our water to rest on. So it'll glue, whoops, it went really dark, so that it'll rest on there. And I don't want this stuck down in there just yet, because I want to do some stuff to my acrylic. So with the acrylic, most sheet acrylic comes with a backing on it. So this has a blue film on it. So I can go ahead and pull my film, and that just prevents it from getting all scratched up. Now you can take some gel medium, ink, whatever, to give some water effect. I'm going to do this real quickly with just some chalk ink, and just adding along, just to give it, you know, as if it's kind of foaming up a little bit around the pilings. You know, the water is turned up just ever so slightly and up against the wall of here. Now I would want this to dry before I stick this down. You can also use some, I'm going to add a little bit of blue in there as well. I would probably want this to dry in between each of these layers that I'm doing, and I would also adding some gel medium can give the effect of water as well. So you want this to dry, but there's all sorts of things that you can do to give the effect of the water. So let me set that aside for a second and let that dry, because I am going to get my gel medium out, because then I'm going to put some sand down inside my, and any brand of gel medium is going to work for this. This just happens to be the Faber-Castell. Ranger has one. Golden has one. So we're just going to slather this down inside along this base. Give a nice coat of it. And this is essentially going to act like a glue for our sand to go down in there. Glue this down inside. I mean, just kind of, you don't have to be real pretty with it. It's going to get covered up. Just make sure you've got it over much of the surface. And then we're going to just take some sand. I've also used some of the Stampendous fragments. Those work. But just sprinkle a little sand down in there. This could be sand you actually bring back from the beach if you want. Don't put a lot in, just enough to kind of cover over. Shake it around, get it attached down in. Now this will be covered over, so it doesn't have to be totally perfect. So I've got my sand down in there. Then I can take a couple of shells, and as long as they're not real deep shells, I'm not even gonna glue them down because they're gonna be held in there with our piece of acrylic holding it down in. Now I'm not necessarily going to glue this piece in because I want it to dry, and I also, if I take, here, let me just put some gel medium on it, and then, since we're not going to glue it in just yet, so I can take some of my medium and just kind of, it'll dry clear for the most part, so then I can just take and blob it along in the edges too. I can do some parts in the center, because then as it dries, it'll just look like the water is kind of frothed up and that sort of thing. And you're just going to let it set and air dry. But you can just add some of the gel medium, and it just gives it an effect as if, you know, you've got water that is doing its thing. So I'll pull this out in a little bit here. But what we'll do next is you're going to slip this. You're going to add some glue onto your ledger all the way around, and then this will slip down and around our pilings, and it'll sit right down on that ledge and hold in place. So it'll look more like water once I have that gel medium dries. But see how that gives the effect of there being water. You're going to do the same thing over on these two side pieces. I'm not going to go ahead and do those right now, but you'll do the same sort of thing. That way then, by having those shells, they're attached in there but they're not glued down, so that the shells can move around. The next step of what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our dock made, and same sort of thing as we've been doing. We've got a front and a back, and then we have our two sides, and we're going to use our construction strips to put these pieces together, and we're going to form a shallow pan or box without a top. And again, these strips are on the inside, and so our seams are abutting. So again, lining our folds up with the edge of the chipboard and attaching these guys down on all four sides. Okay, one last side. Now there's two ways that you can create this box sides. When it's so narrow of only a ½ inch, using construction strips makes it very difficult to attach those to create this little shallow pan. If I take a strip of my pattern paper that I'm going to cover this with and my tape, I can go ahead and use this paper essentially to create my box. So I'm going to run my score tape down the length of it, peel this off, and I'm going to roughly center this. You want to make sure it's longer than what our whole thing needs to be. So we're going to center that on there. I'm going to wrap this around, butting those corners together here, and then this is going to wrap around to the back side like this. This will be the side that's going to attach to the birdhouse, so it doesn't need to be covered. but how quick and easy that is. If I'd have done a better job of centering it. But so you can see how quickly that creates that box. I've also cut strips that are 1/2 inch wide to create planking on my dock. And so those can be attached in. I probably want to ink my chipboard first, but then you can add these planks of pattern paper to the top of your dock. I'm not going to attach those in right at this moment, but I'll show you then. Your dock is going to slip down in, and you can decide what height you want your dock. You can attach your dock at whatever height. If you want to be able to see more of the water, I do it to where it's probably about 1.5 inches up from my water. This top edge is 1.5 inches from the water, 1.25 inches. So you'll be able to attach it to the birdhouse, and then I put a little dab of glue in at the corners, because it's going to kiss the 4 corners here and here, and then also glue it to here, so it's essentially then attached in. So I'm going to show you on the finished one some of the finishing touches that you can add. So here you can see I got my dock with my dock planks put on there. It's attached to my birdhouse, and it is glued in at the corners to the pilings. Now the next step of what you will be doing is on these pilings, I've just taken some jute cord and I've wrapped 4 rounds around the, no wait, before I do that part, I'm going to attach this jute rope to the top edge. So I've cut these little 1/4 inch strips. So I've glued this down to the top of my pilings, and then these 1/4 inch strips with adhesive or glue on them wrap up and over the top at each of the pilings, over the top of my jute rope to attach that down. Then to cover over those bottom edges of that piece that tips over the top, I then wrap some jute twine around the top of each of the pilings, and that's done, excuse me, at all 5 pilings. I've also taken what are essentially kind of skinny little popsicle sticks, and I've cut them down and then inked them and then glued them down to form crosses or bracing on the front of the pilings. This is a chipboard die cut of an anchor that I have stained with some gold stain. You could also do it silver, and attach that then at the front. I've added some a little bit of shells and a few flowers on the front. Before I would put those on, you're going to take some pattern paper. I ran out of this one. Some pattern paper, and cover the face of your base. To create the opening, quote unquote, for the birdhouse, or the doorway, what I've done is I have a large circle of white chipboard, or it could be chipboard covered with white paper. I also then have taken some strips of red that I have wrapped around the edges at those 4 corners, and capturing some red and white baker's twine when I've attached those down. This is then a black punch circle that is attached over the top. This little banner is made from little strips of pattern paper that I've just attached and wrapped over the edge of some baker's twine. I've made knots in each end and just attached it kind of in a lopsided X shape across the front. Again, you can glue in some shells that maybe you have collected on some of your beach combing. After you get the pattern paper on all the sides, you can, as I said, you can add some flowers or other driftwood, more shells, whatever kind of beachy kinds of things that you may have. So that would be the finishing kind of details. You're putting the rope on, the banners, and then also the front. These are all diagrammed and dimensions all given in the pattern for all of that. To make the mini album, let's do that. This one is super quick, so let's just run through the mini album real quickly to start with. on the pages. To make the sailboat pages, you're going to start out with a piece of cardstock for the sails. I made them white. It doesn't have to be white. It's going to have a score with a half-inch, oh, there we go, a half-inch tab down one side, and then the remaining piece that's down the center. So we're going to fold it in half, or fold at my score line. I've got sand all over everywhere. And we're going to essentially create a tube. So let me run some tape down this tab. And then I will really quickly tab those corners. Peel off the tape. You can also glue this. And we're going to fold this. And it is going to form a tube. So we got a tube. We're going to then cut it on the diagonal. And this is going to give me 2 sails. Let's see where I'm at. I want to make sure I give the right information coming down. There we go. On my pattern. Where's my craft knife? Oh, there it is. So I'm going to go from corner to corner and cut this in half. So that's going to give me the sails for 2 pages. I also will have 2 1" by 5½ pieces for my boat, but I do need to cut these on the diagonal. So once I've cut one, so I want to cut these at a roughly 45-degree angle. And you're going to do it at both ends, but you want them to be forming a parallelogram so they go in the same angle. The same. Is that why I did it? Yes, it is. I thought I'd better check. So this is kind of a racy boat. So it looks like that. So once you've cut the first one, you can use that as the template to just scissor cut the others. And you'll need 2 of them for each boat. So we're going to want to apply tape along that width. We're going to apply tape or glue along one of the long edges and then one of the short edges. And you want to do these in mirror image because one's going to be on one side, one's going to be on the other side. So this is going to attach so that this bottom edge, this corner lines up with that corner right there. And essentially this corner on the back side should line up with your sail on the other side. Line everybody up. Stick that down. And then I'm just going to take and put a little dab of glue up here at this tip. But that's essentially, and it forms, see it has a sleeve, so it will be able to fit over my Stack the Deck binding. But that's how easy it is to make one of the sailboat pocket pages. So with my Stack the Deck, and I've demonstrated this many times here on YouTube, you're going to have 1/2" fins on this one rather than 3/4" fins by 3½ inches tall. It is, all the dimensions for this and a description of how this assembles is on in the pattern. So let me just stick these pieces down so you can see how the page slips down over. So I've stacked my deck, made my fins, and then my my sailboats are going to attach down over the fins of my stack the deck. So you'll make 6 of your sailboats. To make the cover real quickly, we'll have our spine pieces as well as our 2 covers. So we're going to attach, didn't do the tape onto here. So we're going to attach our spine to our spine paper, and the spine paper is the same size on the inside and the outside. Stick these down. This is just a standard spine book. So stick these guys down. I'm going to do it on both sides because I'll do the front and the inside and the outside spine piece. And then you can put pattern paper on the main body of your book in any fashion that you want. I meant to do this beforehand. This is the only one I didn't get pre-taped. So see how fast I can put the tape on. So you always want to have, whenever you have a joint, you want to make sure you have adhesion on each side of the joint, whether it's with an aggressive tape like I'm using, or if you are using glue. If you're using glue, you want to let it dry before you do much manipulation with it. But you always want it adhered on each side of your the joints. So here's my spine paper. I'm going to attach this down in the center of my spine paper. You can eyeball it or measure it, whichever you're most comfortable with. I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to stick that down. I've put some score tape then along this edge and also along this edge to stick that spine paper down with. Now this one, because this is a joint, I do want to have a nice generous gap there so that it has plenty of room to flex and move. Same thing over on this side. Attach that down. Now on the inside, I do want to add some score tape here in the center, because this is where my book page's spine is going to attach. So I want to make sure there's good adhesion between the paper and the chipboard. So I'm just giving that a good fill-in of tape. My spine piece on the inside, I also want to do these edges so that they're stuck down. Peel those off and peel off all of this. I swear one of these days I'm going to get buried in score tape paper and they'll never find me in here. Where'd Mom go? Oh, I don't know. Haven't seen her. All that's in there is this big old pile of score tape paper. And that will be me underneath all of that. Alright, so we've got that all unstuck. I can then center this. I'm lining up the edges of my paper with the chipboard. Stick that down. Give it a gentle fold on each side. By having that nice generous gap of around 1/8 of an inch, it folds up very nicely. I can then take my stack the deck unit and stick it down. Now you do want to make sure, what I do with this one is I get one of my boats, not attached on but slipped on, because I got these points in there. I want to make sure in terms of where my placement is. It's like, okay, it can center and that'll be fine. So I can center it on there, so it's going to center this way and this way. The Stack the Deck binding I put together a couple of years ago as a fin-based. I've been doing fin-based bindings boy, so it's when I first started, I did some thin ones that were folded. This one with the stack, so you have a single layer for the fin, reduces the bulk. So then you'll go ahead and put all of your pages in. You can also then cover both your front and back covers with pattern paper the way I did. Here I've used some 6x6 paper, and I also did a pattern paper on my spine, and then a 6x6 trimmed down, and then because the 6 inches is shorter than the length of this, I've added just some for interest as well, some at the top and bottom edges, and then I could add whatever embellishments that I want. I've added some flowers and some seashells, but then it becomes a flip style. So then we have all our little sailboats inside. I punched a hole on the front and back and added some twine, jute twine, long enough to where then I can just tie it in a bow as a closure. You can put any kind of closure on that you want, because it's going to sit down inside of our birdhouse. It'll stand up down inside. So anyway, that is our August birdhouse bird abode and the mini album that fits inside with a water beach sailing theme. So be ready to go out and hit the waves and enjoy your surfs up bird abode. So cowabunga, dudes. Thanks a bunch.